Penny, welcome back to Unbroken. It's always delightful for me to have you. And we've talked about our discussion today being about the dimensions. You've done a show that I listened to on that, and I know you're going to have an article come out about that as well.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be really helpful to my viewers to people are very confused about what it means when we say third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, etc. Some people think it's a place you go to. So I know that you're an expert on this. So I'm so glad to have you here and to talk about this topic.
Okay, wow, I'm glad to be here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, it's not a place, it's a way of being, and it's distinct. So it's a very good topic, and I think it's timely because we are about to walk into a whole new world that requires us to see and think and feel differently about the world that we are creating, which we are creating. So, yeah.
So even that, what you just said, I think I help some people in therapy, and it's really hard to get people to understand that they're creating their own reality. But most people, and I used to feel this way too, feel like life happens to us. We have no control. We're powerless. So before we get into the dimensions, maybe speak to that a little bit. How do we create our own reality?
Okay, yeah, that's a big point. It's really important. I was just talking with a friend of mine this morning about this. If you haven't had an actual experience of something, I'm going to say remarkable, or some kind of insight, or some moment of awareness, of oneness. Hang on one second. Let me get a drink.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So let me say that again without the interruption. If people have not had an actual experience of an aha, of a spiritual awakening, of a moment of oneness with everything that exists, of this massive acceptance or taking in of the fact that somebody loves you, somebody cares about you. It's very hard to explain what that is. It's kind of like trying to explain to somebody what something smells like. You just can't know until you actually smell it for yourself. And same thing with taste. So it's a very, very personal kind of experience. I think personally, a lot of people have had awakening experiences and they sort of hopped right over it and kept right on going without stopping to think about what was that? What was the meaning of that? And if you have, if you're doing therapy with someone, then it becomes really key, I think, to be able to help them generate that kind of experience, that kind of aha that goes, oh, wow, oh my gosh. And they then own that healing moment. It came from them. Nobody did it to them. And it's easier to get your mind around the fact that every word you put out there is power. Every single act that you do is power. It changes all of the frequencies in the frequency soup that we're floating in. Every reaction you get or you have to somebody else gets you a counter reaction or a cooperative reaction. And people don't realize how easy it is to just stop and listen, and instead of getting angry or upset, to just say, well, I don't know about that. Let me think about that. You know, even just doing that. Or what I used to do when I was trying to learn how to speak in such a way that I didn't create more hassle for myself. I would typically, especially in the first few attempts to change the way I was interacting with somebody over something, I would um I would have this natural reaction, rah, 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 and I would, then I would catch myself and I would literally say, wait, wait, I'm sorry, pretend you didn't hear anything I just said. I'm trying to reform, I'm trying to rebuild, I'm trying to change myself so that I have a better experience for me and for whoever I'm talking with. And people were usually like, what? But they would be curious enough to stop. And then I would say, okay, give me a minute. I need to rethink how to say this. What is the best way to respond? And then I would make a second attempt. If I didn't like the second attempt, I would say, wait, no, that's not good enough. Let me try a third time. And usually the third or even the fourth time, I would get to a place where I said what was coming from my heart,
Mhm.
what was coming from someplace that I didn't know where that was coming from. It was coming from the core of myself. And and that people would then, I don't know if they were more surprised at, well, how many tries should I give her to say this correctly? Or if they were, more interested in what I had actually said. But there were several people who said right there on the spot, kind of took a step back and said, wow, I don't know what just happened here, but somehow the whole mood, the whole everything we were doing or talking about has just changed. And I'm not sure what I want to say, but it was diffused
Yes.
in almost every single case. And I just gave myself that liberty to say, look, this is I'm trying to learn how to speak here in a way that brings love to a situation. And most people were just stunned by that. And they changed their reaction. And when I hit the thing just right, we would both be transformed. That's the important piece.
Yeah.
When you say the right thing, the person forgives you, you forgive yourself, you forgive them, the situation is over. It's on to beauty, something that involves love or patience, or there's no more fighting. And it's very, very powerful to be able to do that. I did have to practice for quite a while. And I didn't just practice on what I called interacting on my feet. I practiced if I said something that was really didn't get the kind of response I wanted, then afterwards I would replay that through in my mind over and over again until sometimes a dozen times. And all of a sudden I would hit something that would be that would be perfect. It was like, oh, that's what I should have said. And when I would hit that in me, all by myself, maybe doing the dishes or taking a shower or vacuuming the floor, whatever it was I was doing, running through all those things I could have, should have, wish I would have said, those things, when I hit that magical, whatever it was, it transformed me and my perception, and it transformed them remotely. And that is one of the things I've learned about consciousness is what you're doing in your head all by yourself is transforming people all around you that
Yes.
you are in relationship with. So
That's
that very important lesson for me.
That's so powerful, Penny. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, what you did is you took personal responsibility.
Yeah,
And so a lot of people out there, I talk about this a lot, we get into victim
yeah,
and that actually doesn't serve us or the other people at all.
right.
And so the way I've understood what you said is I've noticed I would get triggered by certain things. Somebody
That's
would
right.
say something to me and this reaction would well up. Anger was a favorite of mine.
Yep.
And I would slice and dice them with my words and my tone. And then later I would feel very regretful. And of course, it
Yep.
creates a big mess. And
Yep.
now I became aware I'm creating more trauma in the soup, as you call it, in the field, right? By
That's
my
right.
response.
Yep.
So what I now teach people is it's actually the other person's doing you a favor when they trigger something in you, because if
Yeah.
you don't respond to them, but you say what you said, I need a minute, then I'll follow my trigger back into the past, and I'll always discover a wound, a trauma where that belief that originated.
Yep.
And so I pull the thread and then I go, oh, there's why I reacted. It really
Wow.
isn't the person in front of me.
No,
They activated a past wound.
that's
But
right.
since it's activated, I can heal it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I now have reversed it, and I don't feel victimized. I feel grateful when
Yeah.
someone triggers me. And it's very difficult, though, to not react and respond. But I've learned not to as well, to just take a step away. Then, number one, the incident heals you. Number
Yes.
two, you have not created more trauma drama in the field. And then number three, when you do respond to the person, like you in your beautiful example, the heart's there, and now you've actually healed yourself and the other person. That's just so beautiful what you shared. I love that.
Yeah. It took a while for me to realize all the pieces of that and to really get to the point where I could speak in such a way that I felt I was, I'm going to say it this way on purpose. I felt I was making love happen. And that's just it's become a way of being. It was not really very smooth at first, but I used to say to people, I'm busy making love. And they were, what?
uh,
So, it's like, okay, I don't know how to explain it, but eventually you figure out the pieces and learn how to describe what actually happened and the courage that it took to interrupt myself
yeah.
and try to get the other person to just give me a minute to, okay, let me rethink, let me restate that. That's not the way I want to say, that takes a little bit of guts. So,
It does, humility and courage, but you modeled
yeah.
it for other people and they were drawn to that and I bet they started to do that themselves.
Yeah, a lot of people around me are very, very conscious of how they use words. Words are power. They put frequency and energy out there into the frequency soup, which is the Godhead. And I try to tell people, look, we are the gods. We are acting in some way that we create our reality, or we mess it up, one or the other. And we're at such a beginner's level. I have to, every so often I reflect on, we're right on the cusp of moving into a higher range of frequencies and being able to be comfortable there. And I think that's what the upgrade is still going on for some people. Um, that that one of the things I was told was, this will make it easier. How'd they put that? Your blood pressure was up somewhat in response to this new frequency zone that we have moved into. And this upgrade will help you to be okay with that blood pressure without any damage. And for other people, it was blood sugar. For other people, it was, either the increase of protein or the bottoming out of protein or heart difficulties with the heart, all of a sudden not beating correctly and then going back to perfectly normal. So lots of interesting things happening in our world for those who are, I think, really here to help other people and really committed to that in a big way.
So we've been talking about frequency, which you're right. Words, even thoughts, I think it's like when you throw a pebble in the pond, it creates ripples out there, right?
Right.
So let's segue to the different dimensions because they are based on frequency, right?
Yeah, they are. They are. The lower the frequency, the more angst people experience. And I think what's his name? David Hawkins did a series
Yes.
of frequency charts, and that's fairly useful.
Yeah.
It really says that people who are down in the 100s and 200s, and these were just arbitrary regions that he set up, but that it really is useful to look at that because we here on this planet are considered to be a level 1 civilization. And that means that we have come to the point where we can use technology, we can build technology and use it, but we are not, how do I say it? We're not, we're pretty warlike. So there's a distinct difference between a level 1, a level 2, level 3, or sometimes people call it third dimensional, fourth dimension, fifth dimensional mindset and behavior and technology and every activity. Every activity is different. How do I say it? The concept is and its application is different in each one of those frequency zones. And so we are pretty low on the totem pole, and we're at this point of being able to take a step up the evolutionary ladder, and we will either take that step or we will disintegrate. And so it's the familiar rule that you probably that many people have heard: adapt or die. That's it. Those are your choices. Either you change or you're going to destroy yourself. Most people would say, what? Adapt to what? Die, everybody dies. Well, yeah, they do eventually in the third dimension. Well, we're living to only half of our projected lifespan. We should be living to 200, and with some fiddling and some I'm going to say some effort to clean up the world and subject ourselves to really high level frequencies and regenerative kinds of frequencies instead of destructive, we could live much longer, thousands of years. And people do. People who are not from here do live thousands of years, and they expect to.
Yeah.
And we are struggling to make it to 75 or 80. And it's really sad to have all of that beginning effort and wisdom and knowledge just, go down the drain because we're only living to 75 or 80. And yeah, the lifespan maybe have gotten a little bit less since we got into that whole medical mess a couple years ago. But we don't have to go down with that ship. We can move beyond that.
Yeah.
And that takes some work and some smarts and some effort and some commitment and a change of mind and heart. So there are differences in all three of the dimensions. And actually, I can read a few of those, and you can interrupt and say, oh, let's talk about that if you like.
Yeah, I
So,
thought we'd start with describing for people the third, and then the fourth,
okay.
wherever you want to do it.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay. So let me read some of the things. I have a sheet here, and this sheet is actually available on my website, pennykelly.com. If you want to go there, you could download it and print it. So here's the third dimension. And I'll just read through a bunch of characteristics of the third dimension. And then I'll move to the fourth dimension, and interrupt me at any point here. And then we'll to the fifth. Okay. And you'll see the differences between them. So we're in the third dimension. We're fully physical. We're 3D. We are matter, and we have full physical denseness. We're really tightly packed. There's no open space inside the body. Okay. We are very competitive. seriously competitive. We are pretty darn destructive. We are utilitarian. And that means that we use whatever material is at hand, regardless of consequences. You know, cut down that forest, blow up that mountain, change that river. You know, also we want it to be different. And so because we are trying to get energy, we're aggressive and warlike. We have this concept that winner takes all. That's part of the competitive thing. Winner takes all. We have communication limited to written, recorded, or actual voice and vision. So we ignore or we're unaware of the energetic basis of all things. We look at the matter and the interactions of matter. We never see the interactions of the energy that forms that matter. We are very short-lived, 70 to 80 years. We are forced to make a living in order to survive. We're very individualist. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There's a victim mentality that permeates the third dimension pretty seriously. We're also confined to the planet. We really are not able to get very far off the planet. We are unaware of the other dimensions, and this dimension is really dark. It's hard to understand how dark it is until you've been in other dimensions where there seems to be light coming from everywhere. So it's very dark here, and we depend on outside electrical energy or batteries for any form of light other than the sun. So we have a focus almost entirely on the past, and we believe that we can't see the future. So we don't look at the future. Clothing is one of my favorite things because I used to be a seamstress for years. Clothing is laborious to make, to clean, and to repair. It does not often fit well. It doesn't move with the body, and it doesn't last long. Actions are done as if they have mechanical effects only. It's like, okay, move that rock or put up that building. You know, you have a mechanical set of steps that create something or destroy something. We create huge, huge amounts of waste. Huge. Really tragic. We eat food in very large quantities and often of very poor quality in order to collect enough frequencies to live. We're hoping that the frequencies we take in will somehow, through the process of resonance, allow us to keep living. We have frequent sexual activity with very little regard for the possibility of pregnancy. And people believe it is their right to have sex, bear children, and abort them. Children are often abused, ignored, or misunderstood. They are used and abused, something that I think is criminal. Education is lockstep, and it's destructive to the full development of the human and his consciousness. Organized religions and their beliefs and biases are supported by a majority of the population who are in turn controlled by priests and popes. So there's no personal responsibility there. We believe in an external God with many human attributes. God will be upset with you. You know, it's like, what? Okay. With many, let me start that again. We believe in an external God with many human attitudes and rules, and that God is worshipped as the creator of all that exists. We believe that Jesus died for our sins, and thus we are saved, resulting in a failure to make an effort to save ourselves. We believe that heaven is a good place, and it's a place we go after a good life. We design and build machines and structures using wood, metal, glass, and other materials regardless of the frequencies they emit. And then we surround ourselves with that. We conduct scientific research in an effort to prove pre-existing hypotheses. Make some observations, test it out, does it hold, draw a conclusion. We have little or no concept of what it means to be multidimensional. How does a multidimensional person respond? And last page, we dig up, mine, or cut down raw materials from our environment in order to build our world. We use technology to create weapons of mass destruction, and we conduct business in such a way that one side wins and the other side loses. So that's a third dimensional kind of description or set of what goes on in a 3D world. So let's look at the 4D world and just kind of see.
And before you do, I just want to say, so this is describing the current world as it is pretty much for most people. And it's something that even all my life, even as a child, I felt that there was something wrong with the fact that we have to destroy things to build things, like even building a house. You have to destroy so much to create this thing. And it seemed crazy to me. So, but that's what I think, that it's just important to point out, this is the world we live in today. And so one thing I've done is just point out to people that this is an option of how to live, but people assume this is the way it is, right? But now
it's normal.
Yes.
This is normal.
Yes, but it's not. And it doesn't have to be, more importantly, right?
Yeah, that's true. That is so true. Yeah, we have choices, and we are being faced with a lot of those choices right now. So let's look at the fourth dimension, and the differences are subtle, fourth dimensional differences, but they're very they're very important. Wow. So in the fourth dimension, and this really is, it's important, I think, for people to understand that there's no magic. I mean, there is some magical perceptual differences, but there's no magic that happens that's just going to pick you up from 3D and plunk you down in 4D. We're not nearly evolved to the point that that kind of magic can happen yet. So we have full physical denseness in the fourth dimension. Look and sound just like ordinary people, etc. However, the differences begin right there. Okay. Fourth dimensional people are very cooperative. They're not competitive. Everybody is seeking to cooperate. And I call it beginning cooperation, because a lot of times there's this, well, what's the best way to handle this? It's what's the best way to work with you? How do we work together? Those are the kinds of questions that are very, very common. People in the fourth dimension are very focused on corrective measures of matter and materials, as well as of their thinking. They are what I call beginning generative. In other words, they create items that integrate with life in a nurturing, healthy way. Beginning generative means that instead of just using whatever is at hand because it's handy, and we don't care what the long-term results of that are, we're not going to take down that whole forest. We aren't going to blow up the mountain because we need a little coal. We begin to generate enough energy to understand the world of energy, enough to generate what we need. So, and we do that in a way that's nurturing and healthy. People in the fourth dimension have tremendous weaponry for defense only for defense. People in 3D use that weaponry to take over control. They want resources. They want other people's resources because there's only a limited amount of resources of matter and material. And we have not approached the limits of those really at all. We have approached the limits of common sense, I think, around that. But the weaponry in 4D is for defense only, and there's a commitment to defense only. The thinking in and the fourth dimension is do no harm. Period. End of story. Do no harm. Very much based in telepathic communication. 4D people are able to use and predict energy and its interactions. And when you think about that mathematically, that's a big deal. When you can begin to predict what energy is going to do, that's a factor or function of having understood that consciousness is frequency, everything is frequency, and how those frequencies interact to either build up or destroy.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like?
So let's say that we begin to understand that everything is frequency. When you have two frequencies, let's say two musical frequencies is usually the example people use, and you put one frequency in one ear, you put a different frequency in the other ear, and they are not harmonically related, what happens is that the brain produces a third frequency called a binaural frequency. It's sometimes called a beat frequency. And it's completely different from either of the two that you're putting in. They hear something completely different. Well, that is the way that frequencies interact out there in the world, in the reality. Two frequencies come together, they happen to be in relationship, and they produce a third frequency called a binaural frequency. That frequency then begins to interact with both the original two and all the others, and those are able to be predicted mathematically. So you can begin to understand that if you can map out how frequencies interact, you can see what's going to happen years down the road. What is most likely to happen as a result of these frequencies interacting? When you have a quantum computer that is able to assess the primary frequencies in a given region of space, or a given area on the surface of the planet, you can begin to see through that computer what is the most likely series of events to happen or unfold in this location, on this planet, in this, given this set of frequencies, now in motion and interacting to produce that future. So frequencies are what everything is made of. So does that help? Does that make it clear?
Yeah, so you're saying in a fourth dimensional state or frequency, we can see how these might become when they come together. Okay.
Exactly. What will they produce? It's the same concept as when you have some flour, some sugar, some eggs, some baking powder, some milk or water, whatever. You put those together, you beat them up, and you make a cake. You put it in the oven. That's a bunch of frequencies that are vastly different in their original state, but put them together and they will produce a cake. So the same kind of concept, except you're working with frequencies, raw energies, and learning how to predict what is that going to create. What does it call that? The 7 generations from now.
Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah. So that's fourth dimensional, able to use and predict energy and its interactions. That's a big deal. People in 4D are much longer lived, 2 to 5 times longer than we are, at least. And that's without a whole lot of what I'm going to call modifications. Okay. We're focused on making a living in 3D. They're focused on making a world.
Mm.
That's the difference. We don't see the world. We think of just our little life and our little area and what we're doing. They are very conscious of the entire realm, the world that they are in. A dimension is a range of frequencies, and within that range, there can be all sorts of worlds in which the people of those worlds use a range, some of those frequencies within that range to produce a world, to make a world. So they're very aware of that. They work as individuals, teams, and groups. Here, everybody's kind of working for themselves, by themselves. I mean, there are teams and there are groups, but there's a lot of competition. And that doesn't exist in the 4D world. They are very focused on personal responsibility. They are also interplanetary. They're not confined to the planet. They have technology that gets them to other places in the solar system, and that's both physical travel as well as communication. They interact with people in 4D will interact with 3D and 5D and even, um, other 3D worlds, etc. But they're basically, they stick to their perspective and their way of seeing that we're building a world here. They generate partial light. Let me read this whole thing and then I'll say a little bit more about it. They generate partial light and they use both electrical energy, like we do here, as well as another form of energy that I could not identify, but it's always on. It does not cast shadows. It's very soft and is about the brightness of maybe a 50 or 60-watt light bulb. So it's kind of this wonderful, soft light that's always on, always available. And they have access to our sun. So if they're not living inside the planet, they're on the surface, they enjoy the same physical realm that we do. So, and there's some more things I could say about that, but let's go on. They focus on the present, but they are aware of both the past and the many possible futures that they can choose from, because they understand how frequencies interact and produce a future, produce things in that future. They're choosing very carefully, very aware. Clothing is assembled quickly. It always fits well. Some of it is self-cleaning, and each 4D group has characteristic clothing. There's probably a little more I could say about the 4D clothing, but I've learned these differences by going to different dimensions in different worlds, trying to figure out, okay, what's really the difference? What's the practical on the ground difference between us and them? And so I've noticed their clothing very, very different from the way that we wear clothing. And they always look comfortable. A lot of people here don't always look so good, nor are they comfortable. 4D people take action as if they are having, and they know that they're having both mechanical effects and energetic impacts, which they do. We don't pay attention to the energy aspects of things. We just look at, were they able to move that thing? Were they able to lift that thing? Were they able to put that machine together? They don't look at the energy. So they seek to reduce waste or reuse all material. Their world is amazingly cleaner than ours. It's stunning. They eat food in small quantities of superior quality. Often that food is grown specifically for the individual. And they have these little, I'm going to call it sort of like a mini fridge or a mini climate controlled growing piece of equipment in their kitchen. And they the individual who's going to eat the food is going to program in a set of frequencies, and that food is grown with that individual's frequency being inputted around that plant. And since plants are intelligent and their whole purpose is to heal whoever's tending them, they will adjust their chemistry and their frequency to heal whoever is taking care of them. Well, in the 4D world, you program in what you want for lunch, and by lunch it is ready, and the frequencies are specific to you, the individual, for your healing. High density nutrition, extraordinary. It's their way of doing food is very different. There's some sexual activity, but with great care to avoid unplanned or unwanted pregnancy. All children are by choice, and they are treasured. It's stunning, the difference between the way that we have children and treat them and what goes on in a 4D world. So children are raised with great care and full attention. Education is individually tailored to the child and is designed to bring out that child's natural gifts and abilities. They're busy raising geniuses. They feel every child that has genius capacity, and they go after that. They don't have any organized religions or any worship. However, they do have churches and cathedral-like places that you go into, and they have these healing ceremonies, and it's extraordinary music and dance and celebration of existence. And I won't say anymore. I've been in one of those celebrations. I could barely remember what happened. It was so extraordinary. So no organized religions or worship. Personal responsibility for life, for health, and for peace is widespread. It's common. Everybody has that. People do not subscribe to an external God. They take responsibility for what is happening around them. However, they do interact with people that are very much involved in 3D religions, and they're very respectful of that. They feel that that's a stepping stone for some people. So they don't poo-poo that at all. They understand that the human passes through stages of development. They know what those stages are, and they very carefully design education to bring children through those stages of development very quickly and completely. A lot of their children are functional at, I'm going to say, the age of 2 or 3, that it takes us to the age of 15 or 16 to get to. And those children are functional at the age of, say, 15 or 16. They're the equivalent of somebody who's 40 or 50 here and has been very carefully nurturing consciousness. So it's a whole different way of bringing development forward. 4D people understand that a good life is the responsibility of each individual, and they take that very seriously. And they're very careful to, let's say somebody's making a bad day. They're very respectful of what I'm going to call the support needed to help that individual recover his true self. And that's how they think of it. Recover your true self, recover the God self, which is somebody who's patient and has a sense of humor, is full of energy, is cooperative, etc. So their machinery and structures are designed and built using very carefully chosen materials. Many of those materials developed for the beneficial frequency environment they maintain. So the houses, the workshops that they have are all built using materials that maintain good health, high energy. They heal people that are in those spaces. That's a critical thing. They conduct scientific research in an effort to discover the characteristic behaviors of frequency interaction. In other words, they're researching frequencies, and they learn how to better coordinate and utilize them, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago. They understand and use abilities that come with multidimensional existence. And multidimensional existence is a step away from linear time, linear perception, and other directed causality. This is something that I teach in Intuition 6, but just briefly, I'll say that if you believe in time, that there's this thing out there called time, that's really something that it indicates your level of development. Once you become multidimensional, what that means is that your perception is no longer linear. You need this information here instead of having to have this happen and then that and then this and then those in order to get to an outcome. You just go to the outcome and see. And that's multidimensional perception. Linear perception is waiting for everything to unfold so you can see what is the outcome. So that's linear perception that leads to linear thinking. Linear thinking is, I'm just an objective observer here. I'm just watching. In other words, you have no power. You have no power to cause anything. And the result is other directed causality. I didn't do that. I didn't make that happen. Somebody, something, some other thing caused that to happen. That's a stage of development that I think we're moving beyond. We are beginning or needing to begin to think about what are we doing with consciousness? How are we reacting or responding? What can we see and know without waiting for all this, quote, time to go by? Because time is just the movement of your perception. So that multidimensional existence is a whole different way of using consciousness to perceive reality and to help shape it.
Right.
So very, very important there. And then lastly, 4D people use some 3D products while researching and applying new processes of energy amendment to both new and existing materials. In other words, they use some of the stuff that we have, but they modify it. And they're always researching, how do we make this better? How do we use this in such a way that there's no harm to anything or anyone? How do we make this thing last forever and improve it without throwing it away and starting over, kind of thinking? They use technology to create beneficial tools that will help people to advance their civilization, their human development, and to bring a sense of security, joy, and ease to life. They're very relaxed. So they use AI. There's a lot of discussion going on around AI these days, but they use it because they're committed to do no harm. And that's a whole different approach than what we have here. And then lastly, they conduct business in such a way that both sides benefit from a win-win agreement.
Yeah.
Very, very important. So that's all 4D. That's different enough from the way that we conduct ourselves that it amounts to a whole different world. And an ability to use energy in such a way that you can block people who are destructive from getting into your world. So yeah, so that's 4D. You want to make any comments about that one?
Yeah, I have some questions. So as you were
Okay.
describing 4D, There's a lot of us that have a lot of these qualities, like do no harm,
Yeah,
self-responsibility, communicating telepathically with people,
right.
all these kinds of things, cooperating.
Yeah,
It really struck me when you said the focus is creating a new world, a better world, rather, than your daily life.
right.
So I can identify a lot of those things in myself and in
Yeah,
you and in people I know. So is it the case that here in this 3D world, some people are kind of almost or partially in 4D? And maybe that's why when you talk to someone who's strictly in 3D, they think you're crazy and there's no ability to understand each other. Is that why?
yeah, that is.
Okay. Okay.
That is. And it's really an art to be able to have a conversation that helps seed some of the ideas and the approaches from a 4D realm into a 3D realm, because eventually the 4D realm gets fleshed out, I'll call it, gets more people coming over to that way of being. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
It's not another earth.
Right.
It's a way of life, and it's so important that we continue to seed. There doesn't need to be a whole lot of people here. This is something that I said, that I think is really important. That there's a few people that are really out there on the edge. They're studying things, they're learning things, they're trying things, they're beyond the 3D thinking, which is really very judgmental and very narrow. Um, and then, so there's maybe just 1 or 2% there that are good and far, far ahead. And then there's another group, maybe 9 or 10%, that are kind of like you and other people that I know, wonderful people, really have 1.5 legs in the 4D world, and is still operating in 3D, but really would prefer to be in 4D full time, and are looking for where are the other people that are willing to live this way, and make sense. And then, so that's like the first 10% of the, if you look at the population. And then there's a huge glut of people that really, they're, they're really in 3D, but you know what? They'll go along with things, whatever they're told to do.
Right.
And so the narrative becomes really, really important, because they will follow whoever is making sense and making their life easy,
Hmm.
um, and bringing a sense of security, joy, and ease. And so there aren't enough people that are, I'm going to say, out there working, able to. There aren't enough people listening quite yet. There's still the people that are the naughty boys are still very, very vocal. And so a lot of people are listening to that and they're going along with that.
Yeah.
Those who survive the program, because it is an extermination program that is being carried out, those who survive will eventually come over to 4D, because they will see the results of what has happened to that 3D world. So, and then there's some who just will never. There's a few at the bottom who will never get it, never understand. But I think it's important that we have the people in the middle, the big group that will go along with something, whoever's speaking. And that's why there's an attempt to silence people who have been speaking, singing a different song, if I could say it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel that what's happening right now, are we kind of going into a fourth dimensional world? And does it take a certain, like I know the 100th monkey syndrome, like does it take
Yeah.
a certain percentage for us to then be in a 4D world, or is it the case that some of us will live here in a 4D reality, but some will stay in a third and will be sharing the same planet? Like, what do you think the trajectory is?
That's not clear yet. We haven't seen enough people really get interested in that 4D world. And I think it's because they don't know. They don't know what it's about. They don't know how it works, how it functions. And the people that are learning that, what I see is that there's quite a few people that are interested in moving to a better world. They might not call it 4D, but they're very clear that they are fed up with what's happening and all of the crap that's happening. And I think the people that are the naughty people, the people trying to take over the planet, they think that they're going to succeed and they're keeping right on. And I don't think they see what's coming, which is people waking up.
Yeah.
Once that wake up happens, then that's that's a turning point for us as a society. It's kind of a slow turning point, but it's massive. And I see that happening over June, July, August, September, and October of this year.
Um,
Um, we have a lot of work to do, I think, personally, in order to get people on board and to get people understanding. Don't freak out. Everything is okay. Stop worrying. Um, and and I think people will be comforted to hear those kinds of messages.
yeah.
And so there has to be some explanations that are being put out there. I think you put out a lot of them. I put out some. There's a lot of people that are putting out explanations that say it's okay, let that come apart. We can't have something new if that's still in operation. Just swing over here and move into cooperation. It's not a competition for survival.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. Like I said, we are right there. And I keep looking at that, that May 19th date and saying, oh, wow, okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
So,
no, thank you for sharing that. And before you go into 5D, you said something that really struck me because I fully agree. I think the narrative is very important, right?
yes,
So
yes,
the narrative that we've been given by, as you beautifully said, the naughty people, that's pretty funny. That's a very polite way to say it.
uh,
Their narrative has kept us in this 3D competitive warfare kind of,
right,
parasiting world. So it is really important for people like yourself and myself and others to put out a new narrative, because
right,
that's a huge part of it. And then the other part of it that I think is really important and that I try and do is put out tools and techniques and encouragement to heal yourself, right?
right.
So you do the inner and then you understand the outer, and that
Yes.
combination, I think, is going to help move us forward.
Yeah, it does. And beautifully said. You have to heal the inside. I think one of the things that's going to become a big issue over the next year, maybe 2 years, is this feeling of betrayal.
Yeah.
And people will try to pin that on their neighbor. That's not appropriate. The neighbor didn't betray anybody. We have been betrayed by our government and the media, etc. And that's where what I'm going to call the attention has to go in order to stop that betrayal, stop cooperating with that narrative. And I say to people all the time, quit worrying. We have this entire backup system called Mother Nature.
Right.
She is where we can kind of fall back on her for a little bit to survive, and we will take care of one another. Look at what happens when a natural disaster occurs.
Yeah.
Everybody jumps in to help.
Yep.
When a natural disaster occurs, or let me say, when an unnatural disaster occurs, we can all jump in to help and to take care of one another. We have enough junk and stuff to recycle for the next 2 decades.
Yeah.
We're not going to run out of stuff. Just give it away to somebody and trade or whatever. We have food. We know how to grow food. Will we lose some people? Yeah, we already have lost quite a few unnecessarily, young people. And yet I see the young people as just this glorious energy that says, hey, wait a minute, something's not something's not gelling here. And they're waking up, and I love that. So they are the ones that we can hand off some of that wisdom, power, and grace to in order to help guide them because they are still young and they will, run things. Eventually, by the time you're 50, I call that young. um, So by the time you're 50, I've said to many people, people in my age group are looking for where are the young people who have a sense of integrity, they have a set of ethics, they are honest, they are decently attempting to communicate and to take care of the situations. They're willing to step up. They have the energy. They have another 25 years worth of work to run the world. They make the decisions, they make the calls that people need. Everybody, we need a lot of leaders, a lot of new leaders, and some of those are going to be fairly young. So um, it's from my point of view, we have everything going for us.
Yeah, and that's what I want to say too, just in closing on the 4D section is, a lot of truth is being put out there, but some of that truth, the way it's being put out is fearful. It's they're going to do this to us, they're going to do this to us, we're screwed.
Yep.
And there's no fear to be had because yes, there are perpetrators that are perpetrating on humanity. That's a fact, and they're not going to stop doing it. But the other half of the equation is us. There's more of us, and we are more powerful inherently when we own that power. So all we have to do is stop consenting to that narrative and create our own way forward. It's really that simple.
Yep.
So why have they used so much to poison, trap, mind control? I mean, all these things, that shows me that we're so naturally, organically powerful that there's a lot of effort to keep us devolved. So all we have to do is say, yeah, nah, I think I won't. And that's really, so it's really on us to make the change. We don't need to worry about them. We need to focus on us, right?
That's so true. Oh my gosh. Yes. And that's people have said, well, I don't know what to do. And I've said, it's not about what to do, it's about what to not do. And, I've had many messages in which I've been told, just tell people to sit down. The old sit down things that they used to do in the 60s. And I said, oh, you mean sit in? They used to do these things called sit-ins where they just took over a college or a corporation or some area and just sat down. And there's not enough people that are just sitting out a day or a 2-3 day period of time where nothing's happening. And that we need to understand that as long as we keep playing the game is going to go on. So at some point you have to stop playing.
I'd like to just give an example of that I read about somewhat recently. They're trying to go cashless and all digital. And there was a grocery store in France somewhere where they've said we won't accept cash anymore. So a group of people got together. It's kind of like the sit-in you're saying. They all went in and they filled their carts. There were maybe 20 of them with things. And then they went to the checkout and they said, oh, all we have is cash. And the manager of the store came out and was very stressed out and undid the policy, and they were able to pay cash. So that's the power that we have.
Yeah, there you go. Very, very important. Oh my gosh, we do have power. Consciousness is our power. It's the power to put our attention and to learn and to understand what to do and what not to do. So I can't emphasize that too much. So important.
So let's go into your description of what 5D is, because a lot of
Okay,
people talk about 5D. So I
I
want
know.
to be, and I don't think it's very correct. So let's see what
Well,
it's really about.
I think they're hopeful. So it's like, okay. So 5D is not quite as physically dense.
Mm,
Okay. There's a little bit of, I'm going to call lightening up of the body. It is where 4D is beginning cooperative, 5D is complete cooperative, amazing cooperative. And there's some things I could say about that, but they are also corrective. 4D is corrective of matter and materials. 5D is corrective of matter and the interactions of energy. They are correcting back at the source of things. They are fully generative, which means they create stable, healthy, beautiful environments, and they fill all needs with items generated, they're generative, items generated from the field of energy around them. They're not digging up the earth, they're not chopping down trees, they're not um, refining metals and having waste dumped into rivers and smoke poured into the air. They generate what they need because they've learned how to manipulate frequencies in such a way that the frequency produces matter or
right.
whatever it is they need. So that's fully generative. They are committed to extraordinary weaponry, but it's defensive only and sometimes transdimensional. They will move to another dimension rather than fight or hurt anyone.
Mm,
They are also based on do no harm, and they have an addition to that, which is create and correct balance among systems and worlds. And that's part of their work is how can we help people in other worlds to reach a state of balance, to evolve themselves into a higher state of consciousness, to preserve their unique culture, whatever it is. That's a very important piece of fifth dimensional work. It's kind of like social work here, if I can say it that way. They are very telepathic, psychokinetic, telekinetic, very clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. Ooh, amazing. They are able to use, create, and predict energy as well as transform energy interactions that are in process. So 4D is able to use energy and maybe predict, but these guys are able to use it, create it, predict it, and then transform it in process if it looks like it's going in a wrong direction.
wow.
They are very long-lived, long-lived, however you say that. Couple thousand years of age is considered young. So some of them are eternal or are approaching eternity. And I have a saying that I have developed after watching a few 5D worlds. Everything they do nurtures life. So my saying is, when everything you do nurtures life, you will have eternal life.
Mm,
And I think that's very important to keep in mind that you can't be destructive. You can't, that's what purity is. I always used to, when I was in my Catholic church days, back when I was a kid, they talked about purity and purifying, and I was like, oh, and it always was purity meant following their rules. Well, when you get into 5D, what you discover is that purity means this extraordinary, pure focus on life. You're not willing to hurt life for any reason. So, where we make a living and 4D people make a world, 5D people heal a world.
mm,
Their work in the world is to heal other worlds. They are very integrative, one with all things. All needs are filled by the culture. All needs. Everybody in the culture gets all their needs filled. Therefore, all work is with groups to improve life for all, whether that's research into technology, food development, clothing, housing, children, medical, whatever. Their needs are filled by working together to make life wonderful and filled by everyone. They have a creator mentality. They see themselves as creators, and they are very powerful. They are interstellar. That's a big difference. We're stuck on the planet. 4D is interplanetary, which means you can move around the solar system. Interstellar means you can move around the different solar systems in the galaxy. And then some are intergalactic. So they are, the 5D people interact to a very limited extent with 3D. Very limited. And usually the 3D people have to make their way to the 5D realm in order to learn. And they struggle in order to do that. But 5D people interact with 4D and 6D people. They will help a 3D world if there's a need. You get into 5D people, it's like, okay, now you got some real help on hand. 5D people are very luminous. They generate light. There's an intense light generated from within. And it uses a form of energy that I thought was based on the manipulation of fields of plasma. I'm not sure about that. This is a work in progress, this document, in which I'm trying to understand, okay, what goes on in those other dimensions? So I just know that everybody in 5D glows. They give off light. It's amazing. So 5D people have moved beyond time as 3D people think of it. They are multidimensional. Hang on a second. There we go, sorry. They are multidimensional and they move among the various configurations of situational frequency sets. Okay, let me say that again. They are multidimensional and they move physically among various configurations of frequencies that create certain, situations, and they move among those at will. So they may show up in the middle of a moment where they hear a call for help and make something happen. In 5D, clothing is individually fitted, it's conscious, it's self-cleaning, it contains energetic structures that perform a variety of functions: healing, warming, cooling, energy feeds, physical prowess, such as lifting, running, jumping, etc. And I think there's more to be learned here. And sometimes that clothing appears to be made of light. And it also appears to prevent a lot of little boo-boos. Like when you smash you run into something and you have a cut or a bruise or something on your shin bone or your arm or whatever, they don't have that kind of stuff. So their skin is amazingly clear. So they have no waste created. Matter is synthesized directly from source and dissolved back into source when finished with the material. It's a whole different way of managing stuff, we'll call it. They will often eat a high-density nutrition paste and also take in regenerative energies directly from the environment, from their clothing, from technology worn or implanted. So I was highly suspicious of the implanted technology at first, but with their commitment to do no harm, their absolute and utter cooperation with life, their goodness to one another, their willingness to help anybody in need, They don't have any worries about technology controlling them to do something ugly or nasty. All technologies are a boost to the individual, and some of them are quite a boost. There is some sexual activity, but any kind of sexual activity is mostly used is as a healing and retuning. And because people give off light, when your light goes down, it means that you need a sexual experience. So they walk up and they touch you, and it's like being zapped with this 1,000-volt burst of energy that forces an orgasm like energy through the body, retunes all your frequencies, and you have fresh energy and your lights turn on again. So it's a whole different way of looking at and thinking about sex and what is sex and etc. Pregnancy is very, very rare. Babies are cloned to high-level DNA specifications. Sometimes they will put those embryos inside a woman for a short time and then take it out again. The reason they do that is because the light of the woman saturates the embryo, and that helps that child adapt to life with that family in the future. So a different way of thinking about children. Children are raised as treasures with full development of consciousness at very early ages. Like I said, they're equivalent to our 15, 16, 18-year-olds. They use accelerated brain compatible education that is individually tailored to each child and teaches or includes the need to learn telepathy, telekinesis, and other skills of consciousness. That's a major focus for them and their children. So the cosmos, they see the cosmos as an eternal field of awareness. This is as opposed to a religious system. They see the cosmos as an eternal field of awareness where everything is frequency and fields, and these energies are the self-organizing source of all matter. So they see people as self-organizing, self-created. They also, in terms of religion, they see that there is a prime creator. That's how they think of it, prime creator. And that prime creator lives within each individual and acts in alignment with life. When you align with life and prime creator, you are on your way to becoming an eternal being. And all form is seen as a living expression of the creator. The 50 people or 5D people work as teachers, a lot of them who seek to accelerate the development of wisdom and power in humanity. They understand that a, quote, heaven world is the creation of humans who have advanced in wisdom, grace, and power. Lower consciousness people are unable to enter because of the high frequency environment. It creates havoc with their blood pressure, their electrical system, their heart rate, their pH, everything about the 3D human goes into major stress when they get into a high frequency environment. 5D people design and build machines and structures that include artificial intelligence used to enhance the frequency and natural consciousness of carefully designed materials that respond to human consciousness. So everything they're building is interacting with them. It's a living world. They conduct scientific research with an understanding of the nature of frequencies in order to develop a wide variety of technologies for healing, communication, housing, travel, safety, defense, food, etc., etc. They understand and use the abilities that come with multidimensional existence. And they study and learn trans-dimensional skills and abilities. So how do you move up into the higher dimensions above 5D? Above that, they call it trans-dimensional. So, last few, they generate the frequency matrix that will produce the desired material, thus avoiding the destruction of a planetary environment. They use technology to create beneficial materials, tools, and environments that then allow them to join the spacefaring races of the cosmos. And lastly, they conduct business in such a way that those who are struggling, suffering, or losing are boosted, helped, and brought to a place of security, joy, and peace. So that's a 5D world.
Wow.
They look different, they sound different, they communicate differently, they have different intentions, different focuses in terms of what they're creating, different kinds of materials. It's a big difference from 3D. It's enough of a difference from 4D that it really becomes a remarkable change or a remarkable refinement of everything that 4D starts. 5D seems to build on that tremendously. And when you get up into 6D, people look like they're made of light. You can see they have a physical form, but they look like they're mostly light. So, yeah.
In terms of 5D, the last thing you said struck me because that makes a lot of sense to me. If somebody is down or struggling or lower frequency, that person's automatically helped and healed to come back up because they must understand that we're all one, that we're all connected. So if one is lower, then that's going to affect everybody else. So it's natural to do that. And then when you were talking, I had these sometimes I get these, I don't know what to call them, like a daydream, a vision of things. And one of them was that I think this might be possible, that when you describe that they generate their own energy, like we could generate everything we wouldn't need electricity or gas in our homes because our own bodies, our own selves could generate the energy that we need. And then I've heard this somewhere where I read it somewhere where they would be, for example, driving their spaceship, but it would be powered by them. It would like merge with them. And then they would be able to travel with this machine, but it would be merged with them and obey their thoughts or commands, right?
Yeah, they do. They actually, it isn't their energy that literally supplies the power. The power in a ship, a big ship, is supplied by what I call orthogonal fields. In other words, there are rotating fields that are rotating in one direction, and then perpendicular to that is another field that in the interaction of orthogonal means at right angles. So the interaction of those fields is amazing. So, without getting too sciencey or too technical, once you have that power, and that power is responding to the individual who's transmitting to the ship, then yes, you decide where we're going, how fast are we going to get there, why and how, all the conditions and etc. So it's one of those things where you begin to be able to let me go back to, you become multidimensional, which means what I said in the beginning was multidimensional existence is the ability to put your consciousness where you want it to be. Okay, so instead of waiting for all this stuff to happen so you can see the outcome, you just go see the outcome. And in a ship, what you do is when you hold the vision or you hold the mindset, the frequency set of where you want to go, everything that ship does reconfigures to put you there. That's transdimensional.
Okay.
So, and if you're not transdimensional, then it will take you there, and it may take 4 or 5 hours, to get to another planet, etc. But you get there. Right now, we can't hardly even, well, there's a lot of lies being told, but um, we don't think in terms of going to the moon for lunch or Jupiter for supper. So um, we are still in this place of being tied to the planet. So yeah, you're really hitting a good point there.
And with the 5D being able to generate, for some reason, I was thinking, I read a long time ago these books, The Masters of the Far East. And I
Oh yeah,
remember a scene where they were at dinner and they basically manifested the food out of thin air. They didn't
oh
cook it or
right,
season it. It just appeared.
right.
So that would be something that could be done in 5D, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. And we do have some of that technology already. It's not available to us, but it's hidden. I think we could probably say the Black projects have developed a lot of that.
Mhm.
There are other projects that are not Black, but they're not public either. And then there's a lot of people here from other places who have taken people on board their own ship, and those people have come back and said, "Holy cow! When I needed a chair materialized. When I needed a door materialized." I have had that same experience on board the ship. Um, Thinking that a hallway was really bare, and and that they ought to put some flowers on a little table with a little picture above it. And one appeared, and I was like, "Oh wow, look at that!" And I knew that that was there just because I was wishing for it. That's how responsive that's how powerful we are, and how responsive the energies of the cosmos are to us. So we have a lot to learn.
Yeah, that's what I might call manifestation. And I live in this beautiful home now that we bought about 4 years ago. And before
Nice.
that, I was renting, and there was some trouble with having to move. And I just thought, I want my own home. And then I thought, well, I might as well decide what I want. So I imagined it. And I wanted these great big windows, and I wanted to see trees and a view out the windows, and I wanted skylights, and I wanted the heat, radiant heat that comes from the floor, because I don't like that dry forced air. And I wanted just one big open concept room with the living, dining, kitchen, etc. I wanted bedrooms upstairs. So I designed it in my mind every day, and I imagined it, and then I got a realtor and I went out and looked at a bunch of homes, and I kept saying, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. I was driving me crazy. She was showing me like 20 homes. And then I
Oh,
saw this one, and I was even shocked by my own self. I thought, oh my God,
oh
that's
wow.
it. And
Yeah.
it literally has everything. It didn't look like it looked in my mind, but it has everything I wanted.
Yeah.
And I had to do the 3D things like get the mortgage and,
Right.
put down the down payment. But it happened,
Oh,
and I didn't even have the sufficient down payment. But I said, God, you got me this far. It's the perfect house that I dreamt of.
yes.
I know that the down payment's just somehow going to happen. And the day before it was due, my husband's mother, who lives in a different country, called him and said, I've been saving up all this money. I was going to give it to you when I passed on, but I've just decided to give it to you now. And Penny, it was the exact amount
Wow.
that we needed. And now
Wow.
I'm living in this house. So I consider that somehow a combination of 3D action and me visualizing it really got me exactly what I wanted.
That is beautiful. Oh my.
you know,
That's the way to do things.
uh,
That is not the way most people do them, however. And so, like I said, we have a lot that we could be learning. It is so exciting once you begin to make things happen, there's just no other excitement that matches that. I think the journey within the discovery of the self is not only, it's almost like a drug. You can't stop once you start. And it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's just this amazing one thing after the next happening. And you get to this point where you almost become almost afraid of your own power.
Yeah.
And then you become comfortable with it. And then you realize I can make a difference. I can help. I can make the world a better place. And that becomes your commitment.
Yeah.
So,
So
wow.
I'm aware we've been talking for a while. So, but before we kind of
Yeah.
wrap up, in the beginning, we were talking about the new earth or the new world that we are going towards or want to go towards.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you'd speak a little about that. Like, how do you see that? And what can all of us do to co-create that in the best way possible?
Good question. I think the big thing, I've been to that new world, which is down the road, quite a few times, and it is wonderful, I will say. There's not many people there.
Mm,
For a long time, I thought, okay, how do I get people to go there? How do I teach them this and that, all that stuff? And I began to realize just recently in the last few months that we're going there little by little. The people that are looking for like-minded people are going to find one another. The people that are here to support others and kind of point the way, what did you think about doing this? Did you think about not doing that? Those kinds of people are having their impact. I think that we have some kind of uproar that we're going to go through over this next year, maybe even the next 3 or 4 years, because I see us headed toward a war, which I'm trying to avoid. I don't think we need the war. We've had the war.
yeah.
We've been in it for the last 3 years. We don't need more.
Yeah.
However, what I see is that one person after the next is adopting the attitude of do no harm, let's cooperate. And that's the start right there. Don't worry about all the rest. Get healthy, clean up your life, stop producing or wasting your time and your energy on things that are based in fear or that are not beautiful. And that's all. We just need one step into that new world. And that new world starts with let's cooperate. Right there, you end war, you end competition, you end this fear of not enough. Those are major issues for us as 3D humans. And once you start living that and begin to experience the miracles that go with that, it becomes its own payment. It has its own rewards, and more people come on board and make those kinds of changes. And yes, it's easy to get caught in the old 3D ways. It's easy to get lost in fear for a minute. But if just one person in the group says, "Wait a minute, let's acknowledge that this is the possibility, and we're afraid of that. But what are the other possibilities, and what can we do? What could we create if we just took a few minutes to use this incredible, manifesting machine we have sitting on our shoulders? What could we do?" And I think that that's the start for us. I think we're going to start. I see that we have started, and that's going to mushroom. And so, I tell people that try not to worry, and keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open and keep your ears open, listening for what is it you need to hear? Who is it you need to be watching? How do you need to be living? Where are the ideas coming from as to what you need in order to be secure, at ease, and full of joy?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's so beautifully said, Penny, because a lot of people that I talk to, they're very afraid of, they feel powerless. They say to me, I don't know what, I'm awake now. I don't know, but I don't know what to do about all these things. So what you're saying is you're boiling it down to something super simple, which is
Yeah,
like
it
what
is.
I say, do your work, heal yourself
Yeah,
physically, mentally, spiritually, deal with all your traumas because
yeah.
those hold you down in the lower frequency,
I know.
and then do these things like what you described 4 and 5DR: cooperate,
Yeah,
smile at people, give a helping hand if somebody's in front of you,
yeah.
connect with everyone,
Yeah.
and that's all we have to do.
I know. I know that is so important. We're all here together. We are going to take care of one another. We are. It comes natural to us.
It
Don't
does,
be afraid. When
and
people
it
are
feels
afraid,
good.
ask them, what do you need? And then listen. What do they need? What can you give them?
Yeah, and it feels good to help other
It
people.
does.
It
It
feels,
does.
I mean, just yesterday I was driving by and there was a homeless older man, and with a sign. And so I gave him $5, and the smile on his face,
Yeah.
just I just felt good for hours after that.
I know. I know. There's nothing more, listen to me, more better. There's nothing better, nothing more than or better than the ability to make somebody else feel good.
Yeah,
That's so ingrained in us, that need to take care of one another, to be there for one another. And we don't honor that nearly enough.
yeah. Well, I'm hopeful for our future.
Yeah,
I think we're on the path there. And
we are.
and I just I adore you, Penny, and you're one of
Oh,
these lights on this planet that is
oh, thank
guiding
you.
people towards this future. So thank you so much for being
Oh,
here today and kind of describing the different dimensions. I think this is going to really help people to
yeah,
sort of work on themselves. And
yeah,
as I always say, I'm sure we'll do more talks on more relevant
yeah.
topics next time. But so do you have any last words for people?
Yeah. And let yourself love, and then trust that love.
Okay,
That's all you need.
perfect. Well, thank you, Penny, so much.
Oh,
And,
yes.
until next
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're coming into a new world. Let's get excited about that. I think it's going to be wonderful.
time. Thanks.